Hello everybody and welcome to the second episode of Sequelisers, the show all about fixing bad sequels to good movies. If there's a good movie that was followed by a terrible sequel, we're going to try and fix it. I'm your host, Jack Chambers, and joining me are the two teams of titular Sequelisers. Our first team is once again comprised of Mr. Stuart Ashen.
Hello.
And Alec Plowman.
Hello.
And our second team, Mr. Matthew Stogden.
Hello.
And Tom Martin.
Hello.
As I mentioned at the end of episode 1, we're going to be doing another follow-up to an absolute classic, an 80s classic instead of a 70s classic this time. We're going to be tackling Robocop 2. And as again with the first episode, why don't we kind of briefly touch on why Robocop 2 didn't work as a sequel to the original?
Lots of reasons.
There are many reasons. In a way,
reasons.
it's similar to Jaws 2, that it very much retreads a lot of the themes and things of the first one. That seems to be a big problem with sequels across the board, whether you're talking films, books, video games. You get this kind of thing where you very much too much retread the first.
Give them what they want again.
Yeah. Exactly, with a slightly higher budget or something like that.
At the same time, the tonal shift this time was really different, because I think it's almost like imitation, satire, and what you end up with is just weird, quirky humour that doesn't really make sense. It looks and feels brighter despite being just as violent and gory and horrific. It's like, this is trying to say something, but it looks like a TV special. I don't.
It lacks that Verhoeven touch.
Yeah.
Having rewatched Starship Troopers recently for another podcast, it was really clear that you can do dark and gritty without having it visually dark and gritty, because you've got to have that subtext. And I think, much as I bloody love Irvin Kershner because he directs the greatest film of all time, in my opinion, and The Empire Strikes Back, and one of the greatest sequels of all time, he kind of drops the ball on this one
very much
in a big way.
I don't think you can lay the blame on Kershner.
No,
because
it's a weak script. Let's put it
It's,
that way. Let's blame Miller, because it's fashionable to blame Frank Miller these days for everything.
But I think it's weirdly episodic, Robocop 2. We were talking about the fact that
most of the way it ends, Jesus Christ.
It's so episodic. Like, it starts off, Murphy, problems with the family, eh? Oh, how's that going to come together? Oh, we've dealt with that now. Here's another bit. Oh, Murphy, you've got all these crazy new directives. Hey, we've dealt with that now. Another bit. Yeah. This isn't a series of comic books. This
it also
is
feels
film.
like someone hasn't watched the end of the last episode, where this humanity's kind of restored. It's like, hello! It's like, I thought we passed this.
So he said his name was Murphy at the end, not, I'm still Robocop. Dun, 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 dun.
Not that synchronous.
Is that the new subtitle? I'm still Robocop.
It's the last line that I can't remember what the last line is. I think it's just like, it's
nice shooting, son. What's your name? Murphy.
No, the second one, sorry.
Oh God knows how that finishes.
I think that's
on a dance level.
I think the second one ends basically with spoilers, I guess. By the way, listen to this podcast, but
don't do drugs, kid.
Kind of.
I only saw it the other day.
Well, basically speaking, everything's coming together, and it's like, OCP's on the run now, boys. We're going to have that little bit of a conclusion, a bit of closure. Nope. Gets in the car, drive off, and Lewis says, "This is ridiculous," or something like that. And then he says,
"We're only human."
We're only human. I was like, "Just another day on the beat," and it's like, "Oh shit, it's over." What? Where's the epilogue? It's almost like someone watched Die Hard and thought, "That was pretty good." I didn't really understand. You can't just put someone in a limo and drive away, and that's the end of the film. So it's a bit of a mess. I mean, there's some really salvageable bits. The animatronics are really nice again,
as they were before.
I mean, the Weller does a great job again. I really
the sequences with the failed Robocops.
Yes,
absolutely fantastic. Yeah. So I remember laughing till I was almost sick the first time I saw it.
We did the same again, just describing them to each other when we were writing this, without them having to be there. That memory was...
And also the opening sequence as well, quite bold. Well, I said bold. Where they're just a constant barrage of news reports of everything going to shit. It's like, and this just in, and this just in, and this just... So it comes off targets, this is going to be a great film. And then...
Well, that's a very classic Frank Miller...
trope. Just show it
talking about the Dark Knight Returns and things like that. It's kind of Miller's thing is having loads of news reports happening, and his kind of apocalyptic view on things is the news takes over the world and they report on everything and that kind of thing. It's
which you see a lot in sequels these days, especially
we see a lot in obviously in all of Verhoeven's work, the sort of the original Robocop and Starship Troopers, that kind of thing. So it does sort of set you up for a fall, doesn't it? Because oh great, this is like better.
It's the Wolverine Origins thing where you show arguably what could be a really interesting story in a montage. So I was like, just show me the crime. I don't need to hear about this description of it. Or alternatively, like Snyder's version of Dawn of the Dead, where you get it in the title sequence, everything's just sort of explained. You get sort of a setting of the world you're getting into. So yeah, there are some strong elements, but ultimately, again, like all these things I think we'll be discussing in future, they're following something that's really good, really original, really interesting, and they're just saying, more of the same, I guess. What made the original really good? I don't know.
How about them making another Robocop, and this one's bigger, but he's evil?
Is that Ed 209? No, we've got Ed 209 stuck in a manhole in the first 5 minutes. It's clearly not that one. It's a different one.
Yeah, it's got an evil man's brain.
Oh, what should we call him? Robocop 2.
Can I just point out, though, the sequel being called Robocop 2 and that also being the name of the main antagonist is, if it was a better film, this would be a stroke of genius. Because that in itself, that self-referential kind of
I
thing.
would love if the people who made this film didn't realise that fact until they were watching the film. Oh my god!
We're genius! The character of Robocop 2 is kind of a microcosm for the film, though, because it's like, we did all the things that we did for the first Robocop, but we didn't put any of the character in it. Oh god, it's terrible!
Why won't it kill itself? Why is it killing us?
At a meta level, it's
kind of perfect.
Yeah, it's like they knew.
And they also knew about the bankruptcy of Detroit. It's one of the things you go back and watch it and think, there's a lot of really interesting points that are relevant now. Then it was just sort of hyper-reality future pocket stuff, but now it's like, there's
a lot that OCP, is weirdly kind of prescient, isn't it?
An entire city filing for bankruptcy had basically never happened on American soil before, and then it really happened 23 years later after this film in 2013, where Detroit, the city in this film, really actually does it.
Woo! 21st century!
Right, yeah, it's pretty crazy. One of the main problems I have with it is Hop, the character.
Oh my god.
The kid who's suddenly a drug crime lord for no reason.
Yep.
And is he 10 or is he 15? He's calling everyone a motherfucker for no reason. Like,
he looks like he's
really
12 at the oldest. It's creepy as hell. It genuinely is.
I get the idea behind it, especially considering at the time the idea of young yuppies, making all the money and like, who do I deal with? And the mayor comes in and it's just this little kid like, no, seriously. And it's like, no, that's the person in charge of this company.
Which is very much touched upon in like Mad Max and things like that. And having that kind of the post-apocalyptic gang of kids taking over the city kind of thing, which happens a lot in this, and all of the kids are terrible and have foul mouths, and there's the whole nuke drug thing going around, and then kind of... But Hobb just arbitrarily becomes the leader at one point, because nobody else is there, and he just says, I'm doing it, and everybody's like, listen to the 10-year-old kid for some reason. Sure.
You've all got guns.
Yeah.
And he's 10.
Even in a hyper-real, hyper-violent world, it just doesn't scan. And I think that's what's wrong with a lot of sequels, is they lose the internal sense of logic that the original had, or strain it to its credulity of it.
I think the other problem, to come back to Hobb, is the cast of villains in this is really weak in general. Kane even before he becomes Robocop.
Because I love Tom Noonan, but what the fuck was he doing in this film?
And he's hardly built up at all.
He's addicted to his own drug, but he's not really addicted to it, so it can't be that bad because he's running an empire with it. And
he has got a great nose piercing.
He does. And
good nose ring.
He's always at the same
like
age.
a head of a cult which is based around the drug,
kind
of. But
and
I
he's
don't know,
so
because
soft-spoken.
we're going to go back to this episodic thing about the directives instead, so we're not actually going to build up the characters. Bye.
See, I remember I was quite young when it all came out, but I remember there being a Robocop TV series, and kind of in my sort of flashbacks of my mind, the sequels 2 and 3. I kind of must have amalgamated into episodes of the TV series.
It's the first 4 episodes of the season.
And it's like, it just feels the same. And then one stands out as such this gritty, funny, weird film, and then the sequels are just this very strange tale and pain and temptation.
The third one is practically the pilot.
Oh, completely,
By the time they go down the PG-13 route and everything, it is.
Yeah.
Oh, the third one, man. Crikey.
They're very much heading in that direction with this one, in the whole scene with Hobb and Hobb's death, and Robocop basically almost literally says, "Don't do drugs, kids, because it'll turn you into him."
Yeah, I won't leave you. It's like, well, you have to at some point, dude.
Yeah, exactly,
because you're fighting crime right now. And there's a robot around, probably, who isn't you. Yeah.
The third one is really...
that's
it's just... awful from the beginning.
As probably again continuing with a theme with these future podcasts is the idea that it's like this is where we can probably start to salvage something.
Yes, we're not aiming for the worst of the sequels. We're aiming for the first of the bad sequels.
Yeah.
This is where we can, as you said, Matt, where you can fix the franchise at its earliest point. Jaws 2 is much better than every other Jaws movie apart from the first one. Robocop 2 is probably better than Robocop 3 and the rest of
I
it.
don't think there's
But,
any probably.
yeah,
Oh my God,
no, but I mean, like, and this is going to be a theme throughout the show, probably, and before listeners get annoyed and, why aren't you fixing the really terrible ones? Because we want to fix the root of the problem.
It's like having a time machine and going back in time and shooting Hitler.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then the Soviets rise up. I played enough Red Alert to know that.
Anyway.
Are you already into your pitch?
Yes. The Soviets rise up and create their own thing called Ivan Drago. Oh, damn, that's a bit militant.
You just went full on Frank Miller.
Can I just get out of the way and out of my head? Robocop's jetpack in the third one. He was always made to fly. No, he wasn't. He weighs 40 fucking tons. He's never done it before.
That would
It has the most literal robotic movement you've ever seen in your life.
And Otomo, the most lazy thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like a Japanese man. Wow, that's cheap. Well done.
Oh dear.
Oh.
So,
Put that out of your mind.
yeah. Shall we move on to team names?
Yeah.
Oh, which one
And,
did we go with? I remember that.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to team names?
Yeah.
And the people formerly known as the Street Sharks.
Street Sharks!
We're always Street Sharks in our blood.
In our heart, yeah.
Street Sharks for
Street Sharks in
That's the benefit of people who were in the room rather than who's missed that little action.
So, Matt and Tom, what is your
We are
Robocop
called the
2?
OCPs, which stands for Honorary Cinematic Perfectionists.
Excellent. And the team formerly known as the Brody Bunch.
The Ultra Police.
Nice. Nice.
That was there were 2 TV shows, weren't there?
Yeah, the Ultra Police is the first animated one. Yeah.
That was it. Yes, with the range of action things.
With the cap guns.
Oh my God, yes. And the enemy was Pudface Morgan.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's
Is that a character name?
Yeah, he's actually the main villain in the
Wow.
series, Pudface Morgan.
Pudface Morgan.
Spoilers, Pudface does not appear in our series.
Get out.
I've secretly written him in when you weren't looking.
Jesus.
Right.
So, the Ultra Police, since you hinted at your pitch, why don't you hit us with your elevator pitch to start for Robocop 2?
Certainly. We're calling it Robocop 2, because I think that works. Released again in 1990. And our pitch is... Robocop tries to cope with his slowly returning humanity and his relationship with his family, whilst OCP cut a deal that leads to an all-out war with the police and the people of Detroit fighting military robots.
Interesting stuff.
Not
Interesting
exactly
stuff.
the same. Good. Okay.
Good.
Okay, we've called ours Robocop 2 Electric... No, I'm kidding. No, Robocop 2. Robocop finds himself trapped in one of the worst overrun slums in Detroit, the Rat's Nest. With limited charge, ammunition, and no backup, he must carefully battle his way to the gang leader, the Rat King. Unable to assist Murphy, Lewis launches an attack on OCP's executive.
Ooh, a little bit of dread in that. I like it.
Interesting.
And a character from Ninja Turtles.
That's just me mumbling and stuttering.
So, Ultra Police, you've hinted at it with the elevator pitch. Let's dive in, shall we?
Certainly. For the director of Robocop 2, we are sticking with Irvin Kershner.
Interesting.
Who did, of course, do Robocop 2. I think excellent director. I think given the right material, he can push it in a slightly darker direction.
Like Empire Strikes
Keeping
Back.
all of it. That's the principle. Right. Robocop stroke Alex Murphy will, of course, be played by the musician Paul Weller. Robocop goes underground. Now, Peter Weller, of course, has to come back and do it, as he did in the original. Anne Lewis will be Nancy Ellen again. Ellen Murphy will be Angie Bolling. Notice, actually, that Murphy and Brody's wives have the same name.
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
Martha!
That's our Jaws Robocop crossover.
Yeah.
They meet him and just go,
Why'd you say that name? James Murphy, Robocop's son, will now be played by Johnny Galecki.
Oh, from Big Bang Theory and Vacation, the other stuff.
Yeah, and more Roseanne at the time.
Yeah,
That's a good show.
Yeah. The old man is, of course, Dan O'Herlihy returning, but a new character, the chief executive of Ambertech, a rival corporation to OCP, Rip Torn.
Oh my god! Yes.
Who gets to redeem himself for the Robocop 3, which will never happen.
No.
I'm liking this. It's a little bit like Hammer Industries coming down on there, so I'm...
Maybe. No, actually.
Well, you know.
You're wrong, Tom.
Shut up, Tom.
So the themes we will be exploring are Murphy coming to terms with the fact that he is still human, and The Corporation versus the People, which I think is ultimately the core of Robocop.
You guys don't like corporations.
You can't get away from it in Robocop.
That's
what it's all about.
Team America. The corporations are all corporationing up in their corporation towers. Goddamn corporations.
Yeah, it was a shame that we'd done it in Jaws, but you can't avoid it from Robocop. Can you?
Yeah, I
What
think
it's
that's
all
fair.
about.
Yeah.
So in the
Twist.
next...
OCP are the good guys.
Yeah, I'm not sure that would read. Anyway, the synopsis. 5 years on from the first film, omni-consumer products are in a bad place. Their public reputation was damaged by the actions of Dick Jones and an ongoing feud with the Detroit police over pay and conditions, and attempts to make a successor to Robocop, their only public success in years, have all met with unequivocal failure. That's because we want to keep those scenes in.
Yep.
These failures are taking a massive toll on the company's finances, and the old man is worried that rival corporation Ambertech may make a takeover bid. Ambertech have been making money hand over fist after winning the military contract for combat robots that OCP failed to get with Ed 209. OCP's big plan is still Delta City, which would effectively give them total control over the population of what is currently Detroit. Detroit itself is in a terrible state. Crime is even more rampant as there's not much left of the police. Half of them are on strike against the pay cuts imposed by OCP, and most of the rest are tasked with clearing out slum areas that are hives of gang activity and moving the people into detainment camps, supposedly to make the city safer. It's clear, however, that the areas are actually being targeted as OCP want them demolished to make way for Delta City. Robocop has become unpopular with the people as he is the public face of the eviction squad. Although he seems to be slowly gaining back his memories and emotions, he is driven by Directive 2 to uphold the law, so has to comply with OCP's orders. However, he is having increasing difficulty carrying out his job, as Directive 2 is currently at odds with Directives 1 and 3. Upholding the eviction laws are not serving the public trust, and the mass evictions are effectively harming the innocent, leading to internal confusion. Robocop's partner Anne Lewis is sticking by him and is worried about his emotional state. With the help of Sergeant Reed, she's been trying to track down Murphy's family who have fallen off the grid. They eventually find them living in one of the slum areas after OCP screwed them over with Murphy's life insurance. Lewis sets up a meeting, but it's incredibly awkward. Murphy is still not capable of feeling proper emotions and can't deal with it properly. His wife Ellen is unable to come to terms with how he has changed, and his now 15-year-old son James hates him, as he's the public face of OCP, the corporation that continues to destroy their lives. The chief executive of Ambertech meets with the old man, and they come to an agreement. For a 20% stake in Delta City, Ambertech will use rebadged military robots to quickly sweep out the remaining slum areas so construction can start almost immediately. Robocop and Lewis are assigned back to standard police duty. Ambertech send their urban pacification droids into the slums, supported by small flying drones. It's effectively a private army. The droids closely resemble the design of Kane from the official Robocop 2, incidentally. They are met with resistance and immediately kill the main agitators, which causes a skirmish as the slum dwellers fight back in fear. The amount of force used by the Ambertech robots is insane. They brutally murder anyone who appears hostile and flatten whole buildings with rockets. Ambertech have no control over their autonomous soldiers. Robocop and Lewis are alerted and see live news footage of the massacre. They realise it's the slum where Murphy's family live and speed over to save them. They find them in the rubble of a collapsed building. They pull James out with minor injuries, but Ellen is dead. Robocop is overcome with guilt due to feeling complicit in Ellen's death, which enables him to overcome his prime directives and regain some humanity. The old man cynically realises that OCP has a chance to get out of the deal with the other corporation and get good PR in the process. He goes to the police and asks for their help to overthrow Ambertech, offering to restore their full pay and benefits. The police say they don't have the firepower, but the old man offers up the entirety of OCP's prototype weaponry from their development labs. This includes several Ed 209 robots and a massive minigun designed to attach to Robocop. A massive battle ensues as the police and the people fight together to overcome Ambertech's robots. The Ed 209s are, of course, useless and stumble around with their legs stuck in holes, etc. But a combination of Robocop's cannon and experimental EMP weaponry allow the police to overcome the Ambertech robots. Robocop personally arrests the Ambertech CEO in front of a crowd of news reporters as the old man decries him, which is a huge PR coup for OCP, but also redeems Robocop in the eyes of the public. Murphy's son forgives him as he now understands he was controlled by his prime directives. We end with the old man and Johnson back in the boardroom. OCP has won outright. The space for Delta City has been cleared by the collateral damage from the battle, the public opinion of the company is improved, and the deal with Ambertech is nullified as the massacre was a breach of contract, which leaves the way open for OCP to sue them for even more money. And of course they still have control of Robocop, although they don't realise that his prime directives have been overcome, which potentially allow him to act against the company in the future.
Interesting. Very nice.
The opposite of your Jaws 2, leaving it open for more sequels there, very much.
Exactly.
Really interesting.
More Robocop.
Yeah, basically, we want to try and stop Peter Willard doing Naked Lunch.
I think there's a lot of positioning with a lot of our sort of various picks and things.
So over to you, the OCP.
Yes, we're going to do our little sort of technical readout as such. So we're keeping Robocop 2, as we're calling it, in 1990, so 3 years after the original. So for director, we've gone for Joel Schumacher.
Wait.
Wow.
Wow.
Wait.
Okay.
Because we're about to blow your minds.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So basically, he's just done, at this point, sort of The Lost Boys and Flatliners, and he's going to go on to do Falling Down, and you've got some other stuff.
I do have lots of things. If this is the point, Joel Schumacher was going to say, "Oh, Batman and Robin." No.
Yeah.
Before Batman Robin, before Batman Forever, Joel Schumacher, decent director, arguably. People still say they don't like it. Lost Boys, decent film. Flatliners, decent dark film. Falling Down, I love. And a man who's completely lost it and just gone mental, and obviously our plot we'll see later, I feel he's a really solid director to bring a very interesting new darkness to this thing and keep the satire. Because I think the scene in Falling Down, for those who haven't seen it, of Michael Douglas's character in the McDonald's-esque chain restaurant. And again, it's very funny, but really, really serious. And it has a little message for everybody, which is kind of, again, the corporate America. Everything is just like selling you shit and you're buying it. And again, we'll talk about Falling Down later. But the idea is that I think Joel Schumacher is a solid choice, but you have to get past Joel Schumacher of the later days. And remember, this is the 1990 Joel Schumacher.
So, going back to... So we're not entirely insane, is basically what Matt's trying to say.
Yes.
So, returning cast, similarly, Peter Weller as Robocop, Nancy Allen as Lewis, and Daniel Hurley as the old man. We have some new cast. We're casting Wesley Snipes as Kane. So, this is sort of... He's done King of New York, and he's going on to do sort of New Jack City and Demolition Man. So very much that kind of Demolition Man-esque kind
That's
of...
on a peak, because really, Snipes' thing is early 90s. Yeah. That's his golden period. And this is just before he gets discovered and starts doing a lot of projects, and we think he'd be a really good personality. Rather than Tom Noonan's. Hi.
As before, I've got sort of two options for DOP, because, I like DOPs. Our initial suggestion was Jan de Bont, who obviously most people know as the director of Speed, but he is actually, or was before that, a DOP of his own, in his own right. And he had shot Die Hard and The Hunt for Red October, and went on after this point to shoot Lethal Weapon 3. So he's a pretty solid action sort of DOP. My sort of slightly more left field choice, which I was thinking about today as another alternative, which I would love to see, would be Jordan Cronenweth, who was the DOP of Blade Runner. So having that kind of very dark, futuristic, kind of anamorphic, beautiful sort of cinematography from Blade Runner, that sort of thing being brought into the...
motherfucker.
Yeah, quite artistic kind of...
Key point.
Yes.
Key point.
Yeah, the next point.
One of the key things we haven't mentioned about why Robocop 2 doesn't work is because the score is pants.
It is.
Basil Poldoris needs to come back and score this movie with the themes we all know and love.
Definitely, because again, going back to we were watching Starship Troopers the other day, and like the score for that, you forget it's just glorious. Like the score is, aside from the subtext of it's quite the sort of military pomp and circumstance kind of with the satire, but it's a great piece of music. It really kind of so having him back, similar to having. So John Williams do a better job last time would be key.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our thing.
Is the Robocop theme in Robocop 2 at all?
I don't think it's in it at all.
No.
They brought it back for the third one, didn't they?
Yes. But it just seems weird to not have it in
really
at all.
does,
It's just
doesn't
nothing
it?
score.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Definitely.
So, our synopsis, if you're all sitting comfortably. Robocop 2. Our story opens in 2047, a few years after the events of Robocop. Despite Murphy's work and a few OCP upgrades, he's still only one man, and crime is running rampant in Detroit. Numerous attempts to replicate the Robocop experiment have all failed disastrously, costing OCP a fortune. To create a solid source of revenue, OCP tricks the mayor to file for bankruptcy so they can privatise the city and rebuild it from the ground up. You'll notice that's all pretty much just Robocop 2.
Yeah.
Okay. So, following unrest in the Rat's Nest, a section of the city so overrun that the police won't go there, Robocop answers the dispatch but quickly finds himself trapped and surrounded.
So, the entire perimeter is wired and electrified, meaning Murphy is unable to escape or indeed call for backup. Meanwhile, Lewis learns that Murphy responded to the dispatch that no one else would have, and through news broadcasts learns he's stuck fighting his way out of the Rat's Nest. Assuming the OCP upgrades must have been responsible for these actions, she sets out to do what she can from the outside. In the Rat's Nest, Robocop fights off several waves of desperate criminals, all the while taunted by a broadcasted voice, that of the supreme gang leader, Kane, aka the Rat King. Lewis then also on the outside visits Murphy's wife at her home and explains she needs to help her break his programming and to get through to Murphy. Resigned, Ellen explains that her husband is gone, but she is proud of the man that he has become.
In the Rat's Nest, each confrontation drains Robocop more and his processors update him that eventually he will run out of ammunition and battery power. He surmises that this is probably what Kane wants and tries to avoid stage showdowns with pawns, I should say. Lewis arrives at the OCP HQ and has a bitter confrontation with the old man, only to learn that they aren't responsible at all. At which point she realises that Murphy simply went in because it was the right thing to do, building on his humanity overriding his programming. Back in the Rat's Nest, Robocop catches up with Kane, who has salvaged parts from the failed Robocop 2.0 experiments and built an exosuit. He believes that people need to meet OCP tech and a more heavily armed police force like for like, as the proposed new Detroit plans would demolish the Rat's Nest. They fight it out, and Robocop wins. Obviously, this is a long sequence, but this is a short pitch. They fight it out, and Robocop wins before shutting the containment system down and arresting Kane, believing his intentions were out of desperation, not pure evil. A huge police force arrives at the Rat's Nest and order is restored. OCP intercepts Kane in prison and approach him about getting revenge.
So setting out for a possible
Sequels as
sequel
well.
there.
Yes.
We like more Robocop.
Yeah, that would be good. We like more good Robocop, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
Because as we mentioned, more Robocop in Robocop 3 can be very bad.
Yeah, more Robocop is bad. More good Robocop is good.
Less jetpacks.
We shouldn't have to
more Robocop.
clarify that. That should be just the norm for all things.
Yeah.
Quite different pitches there. Again, similar themes, obviously tying back to OCP and kind of corruption throughout Detroit. You can't avoid that with Robocop.
No.
But the difference in Wesley Snipes and Rip Torn is quite noticeable.
That's quite
Oh, Rip Torn.
So I want to open up the Ultra Police to question OCP.
Okay.
Okay, I'm liking Wesley Snipes as Kane. That's a very different Kane, and obviously far more hands-on than the weirdly detached drug addict.
Yeah.
First film.
awful CGI face.
Oh my god, are they...
God, the Apex Twin video.
completely.
Definitely.
They should just had Max Headroom in there.
Pretty much.
Dear. No, it's the learning through news broadcast, something we used as well. Nods to Mr. Miller there.
Indeed.
I think there's a lot of strong... at the end of the day, I think it's because all of us get what makes Robocop good. And so we've infused elements of the first one. That, again, like I said, the broadcast, the sort of... Well, it's not really implied, but the satirical humour, the corporations taking over, the new Detroit, Delta sort of thing, this extra, let's just plough through what's already been. I think the interesting thing is the difference between the tone of the endings, really, which always feels a bit more despondent than ours.
Yeah, I
Not in a
think
bad
one of
way.
the themes of Robocop is the company always
wins, yeah.
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 No, I like the smaller, tight story. I do like the Dredd thing, where it's a character relying on the wits.
Yeah, I see that it's a weird one because it isn't Dredd, but it does crib quite a bit from
it does.
Dredd.
It does definitely.
And I like that. And of course, in the context of 1990, there is no Dredd
Unheard of,
to go,
yeah.
and this would feel very different.
I think it's because we were thinking... Because initially when thinking about pitches and ideas and concepts and all these sorts of things, you think, okay, how can you go bigger and better and more over the top and more elaborate? And then sometimes it's a case of saying... I know this is a bad example with Alien 3, but it's like, how do you go from Aliens, where you can only bring it down to something small and bring it back to the original Alien? So in this case, I mean, your guys with the huge military battle and stuff, and I'm thinking 90s effects and stop motion and thinking, that's a big demand. That's not a bad thing. I think it could be pulled off really well. But for our one, I think we wanted to try something that was so dramatically different in tone. Still the same thing, but just such a different... And also, in the way... I know I can give an example. Star Trek the Motion Picture versus Star Trek II Wrath of Khan, where everything is technically a lot smaller, a lot more devolved, but a much stronger film because it's more concentrated, effectively.
Yeah.
That was our logic going into it, effectively, rather than hey, Dredd was good.
Yeah.
Kane is your Khan, then.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
But I wanted it to be that. Again, I know it was a 90s thing, but it was too much of like, how do you get rid of this villain for the next one? Get rid of him. It's like, why? Don't just kill him.
No. So we've kind of got like an Avengers Initiative thing where potentially he's going to come back and, tool up and in a potential sequel and, try and kick Robocop's ass again.
So something I didn't quite get here. Maybe me being thick. No. It often is. But so Lewis thinks OCP sent Robocop in, and she goes to the wife to break the programming because she thinks that will enable him to escape. But of course,
well, no. Initially, it's the fact that one of the many OCP upgrades is apparently that he's now blue.
Yeah, I couldn't worry about that.
Upgrade him to blue. Why? Blue works well.
It's cheaper.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's just the idea that she initially just doesn't trust OCP, so she blames them. And rather than going straight to OCP, knowing full well it's a huge company, and things like, well, we need to do something, and I need to do something. We need to connect with his humanity. We need to. I don't think it's initially how do I get him out of the rat's nest, because she knows. Again, this would be explored more in the film as far as actual scenes are concerned. But the idea that Lewis is a really almost ineffective partner for him because he's this unstoppable force and she just hides behind him. It was nice, I don't know if she's saying this, in the real Robocop 2 where she actually is quite decently used and she's a strong female character. I hate saying that phrase, but still.
And trying to almost give her own kind of like little detective mission to go off on her own.
Yeah, she's still a cop. She's still intrinsically
and also the thing with Murphy's wife as well was we were trying to sort of clue the audience in that, and also sort of, I guess for shadows the wrong word, but start that whole kind of meeting is the first bit where we're hoping that we can clue the audience in and Murphy starts to kind of subconsciously realise, well, maybe it isn't my assumption, maybe my assumption's wrong, maybe it is the good that is still left in him, and that sort of that interaction would be the first kind of clue to the audience and to the fact that is that it's he's just doing it because it's his directives and it's the
right thing to do. It's not even the directives, it's the mindset. I think that it's more than I am told as a computer to protect these people. It's these people need protecting. These people. And I think as well, and this is going to sound like an attack on you guys. It's not. It is. It's really not. But when we were thinking through ideas, one of the ones was like we always come back to the family, and we didn't want to use them too much. We actually wanted to write them out completely because it's the woman in the refrigerator. If he's only motivated because his family's involved, it's not him being an altruistic ubermensch super person. It's him just. My family in trouble, I'm going to solve that problem because it's my family. It's like, no, you're a cop. You serve all our families. That kind of thing.
But it's the family that gets him past the programming. You use the same...
that was the initial idea that it was going to be, but she's
always see you end up not...
Yeah, we actually slammed that door.
Sorry, I found that bit sort of a bit confusing.
No, that's right.
You see, for me, and I totally hear what you're saying, but I think I almost would have preferred it if it had then been his wife on the intercom, and even if all these revelations had come about, because I think you could have had a
moment,
a double whammy sort of thing there, where because admittedly
it was the 90s, that probably would have happened.
Yeah, because admittedly, we do lean on the whole, Murphy's family dies and then he's enacted too, which is maybe a bit lazy, but. I feel it's almost frustrating having the wife, because that's my great frustration in Robocop 2, is that he comes in and they go, they made me to honour him, and then it's like, oh, by the way, that's finished now. So,
you're right. That is weird because it's like he almost makes the decision himself to do that, and it's like that's a bit weird. Yeah. Whereas again, this is the thing. I can see the logic of ours. I can see the logic of yours, because effectively speaking. Again, I just don't like the idea of using the family because I like the idea that, again, this is the man, this is the job, this is what he does, this is his life now. He is a cop, he will always be a Robocop. And actually the fact that, the family's moved on, they know he's dead, they know he's doing what he's doing, but he's not the same person. He could never be the same person. That's our despondent part of our film, I think, as well. And again, I think you're right, we could have had that moment. I think if I was watching that film, I would have immediately gone, fuck off, because I would have hated the wife turning up in this ridiculous situation where Lewis can't even go in, has no police person goes into the situation, but
I guess
the wife does, I'd hate it so much.
We could do it.
I almost imagine it being over the
I mean, you go like a helicopter with those big sound system. There are ways around it, certainly, but I don't know. I mean, again, I like the idea that I think I prefer the personal journey rather than the forced journey of the past, as if he's going forward rather than tethered to the past. Does it make sense? It's
a fair point, though.
Yeah,
I think
completely.
a weakness you have is a lack of sort of story arcs for the characters. Like, so we start off in OCP at the end of the film is in the same position it was at the start of the film, pretty much. Kane is sort of the Rat King and an evil man at the start of them. Still is at the end. He's now just got more of a vendetta against Robocop. Robocop is becoming slightly more human. Lewis is exactly the same at the end of the start, and his family's exactly the same at the end as they are at the start.
Yeah,
really. There's not much actually.
No, I think it's more the fact that we've again drawing. Let's take the Dread thing as an example. I think it is literally meant to be this is another day on the job. This isn't a defining day in Detroit. This is just another day in Detroit. Rather than doing,
it's a broad. I totally take your point.
Yeah, you're right.
Because
because we don't want the kind of thing as well. We want the idea, as you say, like the idea that the company will survive. So we want everything to say like, because the story opens with a more familiar Robocop rather than they do in Robocop 2, where he's back to blue and he's back to square one. Yeah, and the idea that nothing ever really changes, no matter how much you fight this. It's like the idea that crime doesn't seem to go away because it's like, oh, we got Robocop now, everything's solved. It's like, no, this is a really bad city. You can arm all the police, and what happens then if you arm the police? The public arm themselves more. It's escalation.
It's like Batman.
It's Batman, yeah. And the idea that at the end everything stays arguably exactly the same because that's the overarching. I know from a story point of view, it's the.
I wonder if it's more that the first film is quite a broad thing, all the big filmic stuff, and the second one, when it comes off as a sequel to something like that, feels more like a TV episode or something when it's made smaller.
Yeah.
I don't disagree, but I think going
Dread
too big
is sort of a
it's a real
thing on itself.
Yeah.
It's
I
the
don't
first
disagree with
step,
that.
isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I obviously take your points on more completely. I really just couldn't see a bigger film working because then you introduce. I mean, I feel like I'm like lashing out your film for no reason because it is the opposite of ours. It's the bigger rather than more contained. So the bigger version for me was always like, because initial discussions and ideas and thoughts about where to go with it was coming down to why bigger, why more explosions, why more this and that. And again, it came down to the getting bored as Robocop goes on. So Robocop 2, 3 and all that stuff, you do see bigger and more like miniguns and jetpacks and all that shit. And it's like, you've lost it now. I don't feel the character anymore. You guys have nailed the actual thing of trying to get the character in there and that's tried to really put that route going through, but I think it's one of those things as I don't know where you would go with it because you keep using that escalation thing, whereas I think our one would be a different one to carry forward. I'll say I'm not talking about the third film yet, but yeah,
not yet. So there we go.
Yeah.
So in terms of the kind of smaller story and things like that, what do you think Joel Schumacher brings to your story? Why Joel Schumacher for this story in particular?
Really, if I'm honest with you, Joel Schumacher nails. It's actually something he hasn't done yet. We're almost saying this film is what Falling Down becomes.
Right.
And Falling Down basically got Robert Duvall being a cop, and you've got Michael Douglas being a crazy person, trying to get home to his wife, who's his estranged wife, in fact. And he just loses it along the way. And it really is just literally Michael Douglas goes through a couple of streets in Los Angeles, but it's a really compelling story because of the character in it. And I know we've sort of made a very short synopsis here, which I think part of the questions of like character development would have been detailed how we expanded on it more. But like for example, just say things like Robocop fights his way through pawns. But it's like no. If you do that, whereby you have really different personalities, escape from New York sort of stuff. Escape from New York is probably a really good example.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, that's another thing that drew on quite heavily. And again, I know that's another thing. Was an original, not a sequel sort of thing. But I think Schumacher brings to it. A lot of personality as far as what can be brought out of a very minimalist situation.
And again, his scale, obviously Lost Boys is sort of more of a character piece and sort of...
Yeah, we're talking about a beach and a couple of rooms and a big fight in a house at the end. So I think, he's got the ability to do it.
Smaller character piece, but there's a few kind of, I wouldn't call them action scenes, but there are sort of scenes that aren't just dialogue, shot, reverse shot stuff that he's done in Lost Boys that I think, show he's got, half the time on these kind of action films, and the second unit people are dealing with a lot of the action anyway. So I'm sure he could be.
And editors piecing together what they can.
He can be, sort of schooled into that kind of thing. So that was our thought anyway.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's turn the tables.
So the tables now.
OCP go on the attack. Ultra Police ready to defend.
Now that's a better film.
Yeah.
That's Robocop 3. Right?
Yeah, subtitle of Robocop 3.
Robocop 3 is all going to be about that henchman from Robocop 2 who looks like Martin Kemp dressed as a Rockefeller. It's just his story.
I know this too as well.
That lawyer. Yeah.
We also want to do Emil's story, the prequel to the original Robocop.
He's just dodging falling helicopters and a nod to his role in ER.
So yeah, we really like that. I really liked I think, you've escalated quite nicely. I think that you have sort of, as you said, you've put there is some character arc going through. As I say, I think that obviously as we've talked about already, the use of his family kind of as an inciting incident, I think it's called, is good, but obviously that
Still a crutch.
It is a bit of a crutch, but
But it was something, I don't know, I just feel that family needs to be dealt with after it's set up in the first one.
It's not just a key part of Robocop, is it?
Yeah,
definitely. That's what we felt that we needed.
If I was reviewing the film, I'd be annoyed the wife was brought in just to be killed off, sort of thing. And I'm not saying you guys were lazy with it, because that's not the case at all, because you are literally stuck with this plot from the first one. It's like, what do we do? It's the same way, what do we do with it now? It's like, well, we just got rid of her. It's the Holly Gennaro and now the Die Hard films. Like, no, she was a strong character. It's like, nah, just close the door.
The character does need to be got rid of, unfortunately. I think you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. Hence why we kill her.
Yeah, exactly. We both know it in different ways.
It's just not going to work going on.
I have concerns about the 90s and the visual effects you're doing.
Yeah, I think that was the scale. Because I can kind of really imagine it, but it feels very much like I haven't seen the new RoboCop.
I have
as well.
But yeah, but it feels very much like it feels very much like it's the kind of thing that you could do easily. You could do easily kind of now with obviously all the CG
I'm not
and
sure
stuff.
I want to see it with CGI. It's more fun with the puppets.
Oh,
The thing is, the way I look at it is because we've also kept all of the character models from the first two films.
Literally,
We
some
sort of
cases
did
in terms of puppets, yeah.
And we sort of did that deliberately because I think that in terms of like some of the stuff, especially that final fight sequence in Robocop 2, is ridiculous. It is the absolute pinnacle of stop motion effects.
Where he's like jumping off a van onto the back of caves and stuff like that, yeah.
And I think on the basis of that, we thought, well...
No, I don't disagree with you about that, but I think that's the thing. You've got two people fighting, not an army of mechs. It's not me, because like, again, all it takes is like saying, well, this person could do it, and that's fine. Yeah. But it's one of those things that the 90s and a bunch of
army
others...
of mechs would actually be easier than when they're wrestling. I think it's when there's two characters interacting.
Yeah.
If they're just shooting each other from a distance, you kind of get that.
One of the
With a
reasons
few
I brought
shots
in the airborne drones, because they're a relatively easy thing to have in the air, like little helicopters, as they probably would have been at the time. And, you can cut away and they're shooting down, shooting up. Just cut angles.
Yeah,
it's
they do
the
hunter killers in Terminator.
No, I see what you're saying.
I like the kind of puzzle box sort of that you got across the sort of Machiavellian intentions of the old man very nicely.
Had to get Delta C just because it was such a thing in the first one. They never quite capitalised on.
No,
and weirdly, it kind of appears.
It does appear in
briefly in the second one,
it
doesn't mention it by name. Because
there's that whole plan bit at the end where
then Kane comes up in the middle.
Before the
We actually ended up cribbing quite a lot from the third one. Bizarrely, the whole Civil War thing,
especially the jetpack.
Everyone has 3 jetpacks.
Yeah. See, the people uniting. It gives it, again, there are a lot of nice touches in the script, and people uniting. I think that from our point of view, because we've got there are a lot of similar elements. Our people sort of unite, we just haven't expanded on it too much. They're almost not really led like the Rat King, and he says, unleash the wave of poor people. It's just they're all operating.
The peasants are revolting.
But it's just the idea that they are lashing out what's around them. And I think the difference is our version's chaotic and they're just firing at anyone who comes close. And obviously Robocop's a big shiny target and representative of the man in the city and the street and so on. The police. Whereas yours is all seems much more organised.
Yeah, that was a bit of a think, I thought there was such good and interesting under ideas in Robocop 3, which they failed to capitalise on horribly. So that was sort of a hint of the splatterpunk thing, where there's kind of an organised resistance. But I didn't want to go as far as they had it in Robocop 3. That felt a bit unbelievable, frankly.
I think we like the idea that the resistance only becomes organised once the Amber Tech people come in anyway.
Once the shit really
once they start kettling them, I'd imagine.
They have to be like this inciting. And we like the idea of, and again, this is a Robocop 3 thing, but we like the idea of this becoming a corporate war. It's nothing
to do with people. It's all about just the
reminds me of the shades of sort of the kind of imagery from that sort of Metal Gear Solid 4 with sort of PMCs sort of fighting against
nanomachines, son.
Yeah.
Everything is nanomachines.
Yeah, so those big,
including the vampire for some reason, because why not?
Metal Gear Solid.
Oh dear.
We won't be talking about that sequels. Christ, we'll be here for weeks.
If we ever do a video game spin-off, I'm lobbying for a Metal Gear Solid because I love that franchise, as batshit insane as it is.
I think, again, there was something sort of allegorical in ours that it's literally a hostile takeover. In both cases, it is an on the ground hostile takeover, reflecting the hostile takeover going on in the boardroom, which I thought, again, as a commentary thing and in keeping with the...
Yeah, I think the difference between ours fundamentally is that you have done a representation of corporate America again, which is cool. And we've done a police story. Because it's more, our Murphy's going back to being Murphy, basically, and just doing police work. And I think your one is the OCP controlling hand, as it were. In our version, OCP really isn't even involved too much. It's just trying to make another Robocop 2 and just chucking stuff out and then saying, we need to build a new city and make more money. And they almost don't care about what's happening. So it's their ambivalence and ignorance to the situation, which is different from yours, which is much more orchestrated because of the nature of the two warring companies.
Because that was their building on
the corporate ladder.
Delta City from the first.
A question for you guys. You sort of hint at a sequel to your sequel.
Yeah.
What are you thinking with that? Because OCP and Kane's...
Yeah, there is, it's really in there.
Where would you...
I have an idea. Well, you could once again follow up their film with your film. And
I think probably I think probably tapping into some of the ideas from the original Robocop 2 and that going back to the start of ours where they're still struggling to create a Robocop kind of sequel or a Robocop successor. We're not pitching the original Robocop 2 as a sequel to our Robocop because that would be shit.
It is the idea that they are OCP almost not the bad. They're portrayed to be the bad guy, but they're in fact just a non-existent party. And then by the end of the film, they're back to the sort of there's an opening here. There's something they can do. There's an opportunity for them, which of course
there's a Machiavellian opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. And they believe. I mean, I kind of like the line in Robocop 2 about the idea that all these cops and decorated people are going mental, and then you've got Murphy, who's this altruistic cop who's of the Catholic and therefore can't kill himself. It's like, oh right, okay. So it's just that he can't do it. Not that he's a strong human. It's just that it goes against his sort of coding. And then you've got this other guy who's got the criminal element. It's not where we'd go with it. I think it's because obviously it does end with that open-ended thing. And it might not even need to be followed up in a sequel. He might just be in charge of a division. I don't know. He becomes a suit for all we know, and becomes it's not literally just like let's put him in his brain in another machine. He could run for mayor and be the new mayor, and because people love him from what he was fighting the street fighting man, we'd go that kind of thing, something different again. Because I think the idea would be the Robocop character being a policeman, policing for the good of the people, even when the people are fighting him, is what we're sort of pitching and the angle we're going for here, rather than a shiny pawn who just gets moved around and says, oh no, and now I'm over here, and just really reacts to situations rather than actively does something himself.
That was a good on-the-spot pitch, by the way.
Thanks.
Your Robocop is very reactive. When your Robocop 2 script, it's more he's having to react to things thrown at him.
Well, no, it's because he's taking the initiative to go in and try and sort out the problem and then realise he's massively in over his head, because as much as he's pushed in the first film and things...
It's his heart. It's his heart.
Yeah, it's the right thing to do. I'd say he's reactionary in the sense that obviously he's batting away combatants and all sorts of
and he kind of just has to wait for rescue.
No, he takes out the villain himself and shuts down the... He literally cleans it up himself. The only reason he goes to rescue is to have someone take away this person who's... he could easily carry him off to the thing himself. It's just... Yeah, sorry. But he is reactive in the sense that he's doing his duty. But again, it's just the nature of the... If you think about
the nature of being a cop.
Yeah, it's the sheriff of the town who goes through and just...
His moral code is always...
Yeah.
His moral code is always going to dictate that he does the right thing, I guess. But
Uphold the law.
Uphold
Protect
the
the
law.
innocent.
Uphold the law.
And classified.
I particularly like, speaking of the directives there, that you had the conflict of directives. I thought it was an interesting twist of having...
Asimov laws.
Yeah, because they can be mutually exclusive.
Exactly,
So,
yes, yeah.
And we also know what happens to him when he tries to go against directive. So
If only this was a video podcast. ladies and gentlemen.
nobody needs to see that.
No one needs to
Doing
see
your best Donald Trump impression.
Yeah, there's something interesting about the directives and about that code, and that was something we wanted to explore. And we also, I think we quite like the idea of what happens if Robocop has no directives, leaving that open to what the character could become, because I think that has an implication, because it is almost that idea that, and this is kind of what you went with as well, is the idea that where does the code being hardwired into him end,
and his
where
humanity
does he
begin?
Because the fundamental codes of that he's assigned really is what was already there in Murphy in the first place.
Precisely,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a Robro code. Sorry.
Bloody hell. Robro code.
So we won, right? Because of that.
No.
Winners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something you both kind of touched on was you mentioned the family elements of things. Do you see that, obviously Ellen dies in yours, but do you see the family thing coming back in the future for you guys?
I think we need to get...
You're just trying to avoid it as much as possible.
I think whether whoever, we were talking about whoever's done it, whoever ends up winning, I think we both agreed that I think if there is going to be future growth as a franchise, it kind of forces you to write yourself into a corner if she's not. If she's still
and
in
if
there.
also the third film or whatever it is, you're always going back to the family. Again, it's the Die Hard example of Holly Gennaro. They just sort of, it's like, again, is Bruce Willis's character in the second film helping because the airport's in trouble, or is he helping because his wife's on a plane?
Yeah.
And then very clearly at the end it's no, because his wife is on a plane.
Yeah.
Third film, it's like he's just running around and he's in a bad way, and not because obviously they get worse at that point, much worse. But the third one's still very interesting because he's just doing the right thing and being a bit of a nutcase. And I think I genuinely believe wheeling out the family every time is going to be so weak.
It needs to be dealt with. I think it needs to be dealt with in how...
You can always reference that they're still aware he's doing cop stuff, or even the kid joins the police force because of it. There's all kinds of things you could do with it. But
I quite like that we left the
son
son
alive,
in ours,
because
because there is the potential to do something with that then in the third film, and there is the potential to make him a more integral player. You could
Villain,
turn his son into the
hero,
bad guy.
That's actually where I was going to go. It was going to be my next question for you guys: is do you have future plans for James?
From what I'm thinking from this, James, he would attempt to have the relationship with Robocop in the third, but the problem would be, rather than it's still awkward, but don't worry, by the end we hug and we love each other. They actually have to come to terms with the fact they will never have it.
And it could potentially be I know you've said in yours that he comes to like he sort of accepts that Murphy is who he is, but I mean potentially that could then, I mean, just as a thought, especially if obviously you run down the route of Robocop sort of overthrowing his directives, potentially him and his son could team up against OCP in a sequel.
Yeah, I think they wouldn't. I wouldn't have it like the son's a cop as well.
No,
but he's got a big gun. And
He
all that
gets
sort of
James the
stuff.
minigun. He's a car.
He's a transformer. He turns into.
I mean, they would both be
jet.
Robros would be cool.
Yeah,
So.
I think he would absolutely be on his side. But it would be the son wouldn't be a front line sort of thing.
Yeah.
He'd be,
I think it's also the fact that Robocop 2 did the thing whereby, as you say, got rid of the whole family, the wife thing really awkwardly, and it was a bit weird. But also, the whole thing that sparks kind of the part of the film is getting shot in the face and thinking, "Oh yeah, I've got a son." And it's like, "Oh, don't be brilliant." Oh, they're all coming back. But then I don't think you see the son for the rest of the film. It's just a non-thought.
No, literally, he looks at them over the road and goes, "Oh, son."
Yeah.
Anyway, that episode's over now.
Yeah.
Time for another.
You either need to commit wholeheartedly and make like kind of you guys did with a real family escapade thing, or what we did and just say, no, they know what he is. They've grieved for him. They've moved on. And it's the whole, this is a monument, but they make that decision, not it's made for them, which again is the nature of these are people, not, hey, I'm telling you to leave. Oh, okay then. That kind of weird 90s write 'em out.
I quite like the idea if, and this is getting way ahead, but if there was going to be
Robocop 7.
a third one, like if there was going to be a third one,
James'
I
revenge.
just because I really like putting Alex Murphy through all kinds of horrible shit. I really like the idea that I would quite like to turn his son into Robocop 2 as it exists in
Villainous baby Robocop.
Yeah, and
You may have to write that one on your own.
like either to do that or to turn his son into a corporate suit for him to get bought out by the corporation or something like that.
Yeah.
Just to kind of stick the knife in even more, because much as I love Robocop, I also want to see him suffer as much as possible.
It's the O'Brien theory from Star Trek. The only reason you can relate to him is because he suffers.
Yeah. When you were first, Stuart, when you were reading the pitch, I did glance over whilst you were reading the pitch and notice you had James blah blah blah, and I saw face of OPC, and I thought that is a bold move, having James Murphy step up and later turn into like a suit or something like that and start taking up the corporate kind of side of things. And I quite like the idea of him being a villain, and if you're maybe not going full like Robo, basically turning into Kane or something like that.
I love robot cops. I can't.
I don't think anyone can argue with that.
You made an army of them.
If there's something we can all agree on, we love robot cops. Good lord.
Oh, Alec.
So, I like both ideas, and they are very different. I know you've both been quite different in Jaws 2, but I think these are even further apart for Robocop 2. I'm going to have to give it to OCP and level the score. I really like the idea of going smaller and tighter. I'm a huge Dredd fan. You kind of nailed it there because I love Dredd so much. But I like the idea of having... and not enough people have the kind of bravery to go much smaller and go for another day in the life of titular character. And the fact that you don't go with the family thing or anything like that, you keep it to kind of almost like a class war thing as well. And obviously you guys have that as well. But I like the idea of having it smaller and tighter, and I feel like it's like a braver move to go smaller after a huge kind of 80s action film. But yeah,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So
I thought I was on tenterhooks now. I thought we'd blown it, but there we go.
leveled the playing field.
Now
Yeah.
it's time to blow it. That's true.
So that wraps up. Well done, OCP.
Thank you. I do like... This is the thing we should always know. This isn't like an us them, fuck you! It's a really...
Sometimes it
is also really...
Yeah, we hate you guys.
Well, we started hating you
I'm
first.
literally stood in the middle holding them apart.
I really like...
Really like
I really like all of these films. We should be able to see all these films being made. They're spectacular.
Do you hear us, Hollywood?
Yeah!
Come knocking down on our door. Well,
Give all these writers and filmmakers a bunch of money.
Yep. We'll snort it up our nose. What?
We'll snort it up our own noses and then give you the actual robot.
Just give me Robocop 2 DVDs.
I'd buy that for $1. Okay.
You can follow us on Twitter at Sequelisers. If you disagree or agree or feel I made the wrong decision, feel free to let me know. You can also contact us on our Gmail, which is sequelisers@gmail.com, if you have longer thoughts, if you want to have a real argument with me about my choice of pitches.
debate it out with Jack.
Exactly. If you want to contact me directly, I'm at JLW Chambers. I host a bunch of other podcasts, mostly about comics. I hosted the Intercomics podcast and the Ultimate Spin podcast as well, so you can find me on those as well. Stuart, where else can they find you?
They can find me at Ashens on Twitter. They can find me Ashens on YouTube. And if you search, you can find films what I've written. Sadly, not about robotic policemen. Yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Alec_Plowman. My various journalisms are out there on the internet, sometimes on ultimateguitar.com, which has nothing to do with this. So check it out, folks.
You can find my production company Forward on Twitter and Instagram and all of the other social medias on @MadeByForward. And if you want to have a watch of some of the films that I do make in my time, you can go to weareforward.uk.
If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's @Stogs, STOGHZ. If you want to see my reviews, one of which I'm pretty sure is the remake of Robocop, you can go to theredrighthand.co.uk. Or alternatively, if you want to see filmmaking stuff, serious things and silly things, cheesemint.com.
Excellent. And for the third episode, we've hinted at it a couple of times.
Yep.
You hinted at it with Joel Schumacher.
Yeah, I did.
And I hinted what I said.
We're tackling Batman Forever.
Yes! It's going to get tense.
There's nothing wrong with it. Just